Hey everybody, and welcome to Eat Your Heart Out. This is our pilot episode, the very first episode ever of Eat Your Heart Out. We are here and in the courtyard of Xochi the Dog in Oakland, and my name is Ryan Takemiya. I'm one of your co-hosts,
And I'm Julius. I'm your other co-host. Yes, and we're here. We're inviting friends and loved ones here for a beautiful, as you can tell, spread.
That's right.
So yes, please. Would you like to introduce yourself, my love?
Sure, yeah. My name is Christian Washington. I am the co-founder of the Comfort Collective, which is a pop-up series slash thing. I don't know. We just do whatever we want. And yeah, that's all.
Yeah,
That's
great.
perfect.
And that's all.
That's all. And yeah.
And who are you?
My name is Wesley Wu. I run a pop-up called Wu Can Cook. We do Taiwanese comfort food and like various kinds of fried rices and other fun stuff from my childhood. I also run a YouTube series also called Wu Can Cook, where I do fun recipes that all are like generally things that are inspired by things that come from my childhood and fun stuff my grandma made, things like that. So
Nice. So the idea behind Eat Your Heart Out is that each time we do the show, I bring a guest and Julius brings a guest, and we all sit down, and the guests can bring a dish if they like. Julius and I bring a dish, and we all sort of do like potluck style, and we sit down and we eat, and we talk, and that's pretty much it.
Exactly. And today I'll start off because we're already like plating it. I brought Southern style macaroni and cheese. It's more custard based than you would think of like normal regular macaroni. Not regular macaroni and cheese. This is very regular macaroni and cheese, but it's custard and egg based, and it's gluten free, and I will get into why later. Right?
Nice.
Crazy. Crazy. And like, hey.
I brought something that is near and dear to my heart, and something that is also from my southern roots, is a cast iron cornbread with a chili honey butter and some apple butter as well.
Oh, yeah.
I brought a dish, a Szechuan dish. It's called mapo tofu, which is essentially like a Chinese. I always think of it like a Chinese chili because that's what my grandma called it, but it's not really that at all. It's basically a tofu and ground beef, ground pork stir fry that's tossed in Szechuan peppercorn, which is like the iconic thing to put in Szechuan food, I think. So.
And I decided to bring something that was both unhealthy and easy to make. So I made spam musubi, which is literally just it's spam wrapped inside of rice and seaweed. But it's a favorite, one of my favorite snacks and favorite party foods, and it comes from Hawaii. It actually has some really interesting roots in Hawaii and Hawaiian culture, and colonialism and all sorts of things and history of war. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
That's what I brought. So yeah, let's dig in.
And then I guess like my question, I'll start off with you, my love.
Yes.
Because you said before we started filming, like you said that this is your get out of jail free card. Has this dish been your get out of jail free card before?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Like, this has been we got into a fight, and it was my fault.
It was your fault?
After reflecting and, telling, like, honestly, I'll, like, be like, yeah, and then she had me messed up and da-da-da, and, like, my mom would be like, actually, no, you were wrong. And I'd be like, okay, then bake them a cornbread.
Nice.
Yeah, and honestly, like, staff meals and, like, restaurants I've worked in, it's like, oh, they Christian make staff meal. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get a bunch of leftovers that are around and just, like, make a cornbread, because, like, this is, like, just weird, random things that I made. But, like, also, here's cornbread.
Yeah. And also here's cornbread.
Yeah.
Also, here's cornbread.
Is this like family recipe?
What we should do.
Or is this like a recipe that you've like had in the back of your pocket? Or is this like something I know like Wesley, you were talking about before, was like having a recipe and then kind of like testing it out and like over and over again? So is this like, this is your mother's? Do you know what I mean?
No, my mom, if she ever watches this, I'm telling on you.
Okay.
I mean, well, my mom was very much Jiffy through and through.
Oh, Jiffy.
You know,
Yeah.
which shout out to Jiffy. You know, I'd love a sponsor.
Like, please sponsor us.
Are you about to badmouth your mom?
I mean, she, you know, like, but also, I think I speak about this often whenever I'm talking to people about like how I got into food, but like. My parents, like my grandparents are like from countryside towns and like they moved to like cities like during migration periods and stuff. But my parents are kind of like the product of the industrialization of our food system in America. So like my grandparents grew up eating very farm fresh food. And like my grandmother grew up on a peanut farm in Mississippi. And like my dad's parents grew up in like Opelousas, Louisiana, which like I can't point it on a map, but like I've been in a car and driven there from Houston. But once they like, it's like, but my parents were like working people who like weren't gonna be spending all day doing things for dinner. So it was very hamburger helper, this, that, and the third. And like, I think that kind of getting back into cooking and cooking professionally, I've definitely like interacted with my grandparents in ways where they're just like, oh, like I was talking to my grandmother the other day on the phone and she was like, I was explaining to her like what comfort is and like how I kind of like navigate writing menus, and she's like, oh, like I didn't know people like. She's like, I love chow chow. Like I haven't had it in years. She's like, I don't know where to get this random thing from, and like stuff like that where it's like, she's like, oh, I miss like making like field pea chili and this, that, and the third, and like living off of land and just like making things from it. But now it's like you go to a air conditioned store and get shrink wrapped food, and that's kind of what I grew up eating, but like. I got more connected to it. And so this recipe is very much like, I think a recipe from like a textbook from somewhere in like school that I was kind of like tinkered with and like, because it was like a very much like a high volume situation and I like pared it down and like did this and added that and took that out and like now it's kind of just become this thing that like I'm always like writing in the margins of the page in my notebook. And like I finally figured out how to scale it to just one cast iron. Like,
What is it written for?
Originally, it was written for like making like 10 hotel pans of corn. Like, it was very much like I think it was like a hotel or like a country club I worked at when I was somewhere, and it's like kind of like I like the crumb of this cornbread, but also at the same time, I don't use cornmeal. I use polenta. I use coarse ground polenta, so like it has that toothsome feel. And so like they're like I don't use the regular milk, I use butter. Like there are so many things that like I've doctored with it, and like with each change I have to kind of like adjust ratios because it's like, oh well, like because it's coarse polenta, it needs more absorption than fine cornmeal would have. And like I now also have to add flour because so that's kind of it's a hog wash of a bunch of things.
That's pretty good.
That's so interesting because like I feel like I had a very similar experience growing up. That my parents, they were working all the time, and so all the food that I had was very sort of quick food. It was all quick food, quick things that you buy from the grocery store. Shake and bake chicken,
hamburger helper,
a lot of that. And then now I'm like returning to, I loved cooking it, so I'm like. I'm returning to sort of the roots of that sort of farm to table type thing. I'm actually growing my own vegetables, and that's been like life changing, like life altering to actually like grow food that you then eat.
Yeah,
it's incredible, and it just feels so different. Yeah.
Well, I think that's like not funny because like we're like talking about like all of these dishes, or we're getting to start to talk about all these dishes, but then like all TL shade, like you are like spam musubi is like literally the most processed thing on this table. Where it's like, oh, we're getting back to the land and stuff like that. But
it's
then
amazing.
It's like
organic. I'm eating organic. I'm eating healthy.
Would
you like some spam?
musubi?
Yeah, totally. But then this speaks to so like, oh my god, because spam musubi though is such like an important snack, important dish to a lot of Asian Americans, especially Hawaiians.
It's very important to me. I'm sorry, I like
dude,
it.
it's so important.
It's so important.
Yeah, Hawaiians love spam.
Yeah.
Pacific Islanders, do you know what I mean? Like, dude, like growing up, like trying to like explore like my Filipino heritage. Do you know what I mean? And at first I was like, this is like really like a lot of like salty, like crazy food.
Yeah.
But,
So it has such an interesting history. I mean, like, it's obviously the Spam comes from the American military, right? The military introduced it around the time of World War II, when Hawaii became this incredibly important military base. And it just sort of represents a lot of American colonialism throughout the Pacific Islands. Spam and other types of American culture, specifically American military culture, were introduced to all these places, not just Hawaii, but Philippines, Guam, Micronesia, all over. And so musubi is interesting because that's a Japanese thing. Basically, it's kind of a general Japanese term for anything wrapped in rice and seaweed, not sushi, but like other things. And so it's really representative of the Asian Hawaiian culture, in that Hawaii is this melting pot, real melting pot of all different types of ethnicities. A lot of Asian ethnicities, but also European ethnicities, and and Latin American ethnicities. And I actually make mine a little bit differently. I make mine with sushi rice. Actually, I make my rice a little sweet, so I like it to be a little sweet. And then the Spam is also cooked in teriyaki sauce, so it's very sweet. It's just tons of sugar and salt and.
Yeah, that's definitely like a big thing in Hawaii, where you find like very traditional, iconic like Asian things. So like Korean barbecue, so you get like galbi, right? But then it will be served with like macaroni salad. And then like every time you see that in Hawaii, you're like, I wonder why that is. Oh, because of war. That's why. Like,
War.
that's why. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's
But
100%
salad
there.
is so good.
Yeah,
So,
it's so good.
So Wesley, tell us.
Yeah, right.
Wesley, tell us about your dish, mapo tofu.
Yeah.
Why did you bring mapo tofu?
So this was I was gonna do something fancier. I was gonna do a lion's head meatball, which is like
Whoa.
really cool and like interesting. But then
Episode 2.
so I was like thinking about like really interesting things that like genuinely represent like the heritage of the food that I like come from, and this mapo tofu is actually one of the like very first recipes that I like really was working
Pass me the
on.
mapo tofu.
I think I was like I first started working on this. I think I was like 12 or 13. I think was the
Really?
first time I made this.
Really?
And the recipe that it's based off of it's not really based off of anything, but it's based off of trying to figure out how my grandma made mapo tofu, which is the last time I had my grandma's mapo tofu, I think it was like 9 or 10 years old. So it's the memory I have of my grandma's mapo tofu is very biased based off of being a 9-year-old child.
Yeah.
And what I do know is that the way that she was making it was very much influenced by the fact that she was trying to get 9-year-old kids to eat it. So I remember when I was a kid, the things that we always grouped together with that mapo tofu would be mapo tofu, and then hamel chili, like the canned stuff, and then her pasta sauce. It was like a meat sauce. I don't even think it was a bolognese. It was like a meat sauce. And we always like group those three things together. We would eat the pasta sauce with rice because it would be like we would have them together, and that's actually why I call it like Chinese chili, because that's how I always remember like eating those things together. So when I first started like putting this recipe together, I was like trying to figure out like what made my grandma's recipe the way that it is, and I always remembered it being a little bit sweet, and like a little bit more. Just like a little bit more American than like the way that a traditional mapo tofu is. So I like started doing things. I would put like a little bit of gochujang in it. Actually, this has a little bit of gochujang in it and a little bit of like Japanese mirin in it, which are all things that like just borrowing from other food cultures and trying to piece together how like my grandma was doing this. So I like literally this was like a whole decade of trying to figure this out. And then so last Christmas I was home at my parents' place talking to my dad. My grandma has passed away 10 years now. But I was talking to my dad, and I was going through their pantry, and any Asian kid knows. So you go through your parents' pantry, you will find stuff from that expired a long time ago. This is like classic Asian thing to do. So I was going through the pantry, so I found a jar of it's like the Lee Kum Kee. I think it's Lee Kum Kee, or is it like golden curry, something like that. It's the mapo tofu. It's the sauce, the premix, the stuff that you like 2 spoonfuls of this, and then ground beef and tofu, and you have dinner, right?
Yeah.
And it's expired in like 93 or something. So I asked my dad, like, why do you still have this? And my dad says like, oh, this is how we make your grandma's mapo tofu. And I was like,
Was this one?
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Oh my god!
From a box. Yeah.
It's just literally just
You've tried.
this.
You spent 10 years
Yeah.
trying to make box mapo
Yeah.
tofu.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I love.
That's fantastic.
But damn, is this good?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Then there's other recipes that I've been trying to figure out my mom's curry recipe for a long time, and she actually gave me the recipe. What she says, this is the recipe I use, and I used it, and it makes no sense because it's a really really white version of Japanese curry. It has white wine, and I think
White wine?
yeah, white wine, which is never in any, that doesn't belong in any curry. So I made it and it was terrible, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I went home and I asked her, and she's like, I don't know, that's the recipe I use. And it's like, so now I have no idea how she makes that curry because it's clearly not it.
The thing that I like about hearing these stories, and I guess I'll get to this in a minute, is that it's very much the thing I love about all of this stuff. The thing I love about cooking, personally and professionally, is how it's just your food, individually. Do you know what I mean? It's it's your recipe that you took. You said from a hotel thing or something like that, and it's and it landed on this table.
And at a certain point, is it still the hotel's recipe or is it just your recipe?
I mean, fully
right?
fully no. Do you know what I mean? Right. And it's that's such a beautiful story, Wes, where it's you found out that it was boxed mapo
hamburger
tofu.
helper.
No, it's just hamburger helper. But then again, what we have on this table is a incredibly delicious and well crafted mapo tofu that you've been working on for a decade.
Right.
It's what, or even just the things of talking about in this case Hawaiian culture. We can all talk about the Pacific Ocean for right for a long time, but just being able to pull different identities, and yeah, I just love that.
Can I ask you, Christian? Everybody has different reasons for working with food. Why do you cook? Why do you work with food?
I think that for I was ugh.
Big question.
I think for me, I mean, it's also very much it's a big and a small question at the same time. But for me, I think that the way that I got into food was just because I was very much the kid that was always up under my mom. I was always the one in my mom's skirt, behind, this is all you saw. There are pictures of my mom, just candid pictures where she's just standing doing something, and I'm just behind, literally behind her, and it was very much I don't want to roll around on the dirt outside with them boys. I want to be in here with you, mom, because ugh.
Right.
But my mom was very much anyone in this kitchen's gonna work. You're not about to just be in here.
Yeah.
No. Pick up a bowl. I mean, and obviously, when I was 7 years old, she wasn't having me do anything major. But it's you're gonna stir this batter, you're gonna break the spaghetti to the pot. You're going to be doing something because you're not gonna just be in here annoying me. So I think cooking kind of became something that was affirming for me in a lot of gender spaces and stuff. And it was a hobby for a while I was a kid and a teenager, and then it was very oh well, I gotta do something with my life, I guess, because I am being told by the U.S. school system that I have to choose now, and I did, and yeah, I've just been doing it ever since, and I mean, no regrets. I love it, and it's something that I guess I'm good at.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still haven't tasted this cornbread yet. I'm terrified.
It's pretty amazing.
It's
pretty
probably
good,
still hot, but
I would say pass it down, but you literally need
pass
to.
it down.
You kind of have to.
let's do this because this cast iron came out of the oven not even 20 minutes ago. Okay, my hands are clean.
Oh yeah, no, that's still very hot.
Yeah,
You
you,
just
yeah,
do
do you
it.
see that? Do you see that? You see that fucking smoke?
How about you, Wesley? Do you have a favorite memory of food, a food-based memory that you like, that you return to a lot? Has to do with food.
I have a lot of favorite food-based memories. Pick one.
I'm always reminded of that scene in Ratatouille where he takes a bite into the dish
Right.
and immediately is transported back to his childhood.
Right. Yeah, I guess the things that I remember from my childhood are never not the ones that I feel like not the ones that your parents wanted you to. They're not like
Absolutely.
fancy things.
Right.
It's never like, oh, we did this like really amazing soup or something.
Right.
It's really like, I remember being a kid and going to this like really shitty hole in the wall in Richmond, and getting like a hamburger from an Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
And I remember being so fucking stoked on this hamburger.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like that is my context about food, is just like being really excited about like eating. And I'm sure, like, I'm pretty sure that restaurant still exists.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if I ever had that hamburger, it'd be like a fucking terrible hamburger. But, I don't know, just something about that, like, it's not even about the food, it's just the memory of like being there with my family, like, and just like kind of represents being like, because I like spent a lot of my childhood in the Richmond, and like, because my grandma lived in Millbrae, so we would like go through, cut through the Richmond. That's also where my parents grew up too. So we would like cut through the Richmond a lot, go see grandma, and then on the way home we would get dinner. And then like most of the time we would get Chinese food, which is where you go to the Richmond for. But every once in a while we would go to, I want to say it was called like Little Henry's or something like that, which is like down the street from the really good Chinese food. And we get this like terrible pasta with terrible hamburgers and just terrible french fries. And that's it. I remember that. Those are the things that I remember about my childhood. It's the food, you know.
I love how like so much of what you're saying is just like it was the worst.
I mean, I honestly don't remember. I don't remember what that tasted like. I just remember eating it. That's it. Like,
One of my favorite like memories of food is of just like Kraft mac and cheese.
right.
My aunt would like cut up hot dogs and put it in there.
Right.
And I fucking loved that. I don't know why, but I just like, I would go to their house and I'd get really excited about it, and I would just like, she'd make it and I would just scarf it down like it was nobody's business. But it's just, you know, $2 Kraft mac and cheese with a hot dog in it.
Right.
There's a lot of things that my parents or my grandparents and my parents would make, because like we were very much like latchkey kids in the way that it's like we all would get dropped off at my grandma's house because like she got off of work the earliest. And she'd come home and be like, I'm gonna make y'all some cabbage, and we like loved my grandmother's cabbage soup. Like we would like lick the pot clean. And like she always just like, okay, y'all are eating great. Like this is weird. And like when I came older, I was like, oh, like I would love to like recreate your cabbage soup. Like, how did you make it? And she'd be like, she literally told me, she was like, I would put a head of cabbage in a pot. Like didn't even cut it. I don't even think she took the core out of it. Like put a head of cabbage in a pot and covered it with V8 tomato juice before they started making those sweetened juices. Like literally like V8 cocktail, like
cocktail juice.
Like
for the
and
Bloody
she
Marys,
would
right?
dump a bottle of V8 like
Oh my God.
juice and then like put enough water to where like the cabbage was covered. And, like boil the hell out of it for like 2 hours, and then I don't even think she put salt in it. Like she was just like, these kids, I'm tired. Like my grandma was a nurse, so it's like she's like, I'm just coming back from the hospital. I'm tired. These kids are running around my house.
That's hilarious.
Y'all need to eat something before y'all parents get here, and just make y'all sit down and be quiet for 30 minutes. And it's just like this. I was like, okay, grandma. Like I don't know if I'm gonna make that. Like,
That sounds gross.
It's amazing.
Not if you spend 10 years working on it. And then like, hey.
And we're like, she's like, you don't even cut it, grandma. She's like, no, I didn't cut no cabbage. She was like, I was like, okay, cool.
No, I think that's what we remember and what we don't is like so fascinating. Do you know what I mean? Because then it's like weird because like even this, I'm like remembering, like trying to remember like what macaroni and cheese was in every black household. You know what I mean, right? Like completely, like vastly different for a bunch of different people. But I remember like this. My mom and my aunt are so, I love them so much. They're so fucking weird. Do you know what I mean? Because they'll also like fight each other. Not fight, do you know what I mean? But they'll fight each other on whose version of it is better. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So like the things that like I grew up that really stick in my head are the things that they were like so freaking proud of. Do you know what I mean? It was like a bunch of different things, but like they would fight over macaroni and cheese, quiche. Weird, right? And then also beef stroganoff. Do you know what I mean? And like even the differences of like, all right, well my mom likes Miracle Whip and my aunt likes mayo. Do you know what I mean?
Just fundamentally different.
Literally fundamentally different.
Fundamentally different.
Fundamentally different. So weird. So it was like this dish I was like, obviously I thought I was gonna make like, you know, jollof rice or like plantains or something like that, and then I was like, actually, like I think it has to be this like macaroni and cheese, because there's that thing, like a few years ago or something like that, and I cooked like a bunch of food. It was I think it was for my mom or something like that, and I cooked macaroni and cheese, and she was like, your macaroni and cheese is better than mine.
Ooh.
Oh,
Wow.
And I was like, what?
that's a
And
big
she's
statement.
Like, literally, do you know what I
Huge.
mean?
Wow.
And it was like, so like as I got older and I started like doing personal like small chefing gigs and stuff like that, and just exploring and testing and stuff like that, I realized that I like knew. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I knew better
Right.
how to like craft.
Right.
Like
Than your mom
this.
does.
Exactly. Where even was like this, it was like, oh, well, I know how to make this really well, this like southern style macaroni and cheese, because I've tried every other, like tested, tried and true every other, like a science, every other type of macaroni and cheese.
Right.
Like I can make a gluten-free macaroni and cheese that's not going to make me and my family fall asleep in 30 minutes.
Right.
Because, like, yeah. So I
Right.
just,
Right.
God. And there's something so, like, beautiful about, like, the science of, like, custard in this macaroni and cheese. But all that's being said, like, I love, obviously all of it is like from our parents and stuff like that, but I love like trying to figure out like what was real, what was not real, what was the recipe.
Right.
Do you know
right,
what I mean?
Right. That's like one of my favorite things about like, I just like the heritage of food and like where it comes from. It's also the reason why I don't like the term fusion, because to me like fusion food is really just food. Aren't we just talking about food? That's what all food is. All food is fusion in some respect, right? And like when you think about like how like dishes like that's another reason why I don't like the idea of like authentic Chinese food, which is like the fuck does that mean? Like authentic to who are you talking about? Authentic to like 1800s China? Because like what the hell did that taste like? I have no idea, right? So like this is authentic to me, which is like to say it is like authentic to the Asian American experience in 1990, like growing up in a white suburb, right? Which means that like probably not going to find doubanjiang. If you are using it, you're probably going to have to like drive very, very far for it. Like probably like adapting these things because you're feeding a large family to feed like children, you know, and like very often you're probably going to take shortcuts. It probably involves a lot of shortcuts, which is like how food heritage develops and like how you grow, like you pass these things on is because of the way that like because of context, you know.
Yeah, and
that's always
that's
really
one of the things that I really like about your food. You know, having been to your pop-up and having tasted some, you know, seen some of your dishes that you make on your website, is that you're trying very hard to be you. You're not trying to be anybody else, and you're actually, and you put that out there, and you're saying like these are the recipes that I'm trying to recreate my mother's recipes, my grandmother's recipes. These are mine. I'm not trying to speak for China,
everybody,
you know, like the entire country,
everybody, you know.
everybody. I'm like yes, it's called mapo tofu, but it's my mapo tofu. And that's like, I think that's what Asian Americans need in general, because we get so caught up in notions of authenticity and like whether or not we're living up to the standard of Asia, this crazy place that's thousands of miles away that a lot of us never been to. I just love that your food is it's for, I mean, it is like, well, I hate to use this term, like for us by us, but it's like it's for Asian Americans. But that's kind of what it is, you know? And I think that if more Asian Americans did that, and embraced the imperfection of our cuisine, imperfection, or the perfection of the imperfection of our cuisine, and the uniqueness of our cuisine, we would have so many amazing, unique, like groundbreaking dishes that I think we could really be proud of.
So we'll say one more thing is that like that reminds me a lot of like the struggle of like finding identity as an Asian American, because you never actually know what it actually means to be an Asian American, which means that like, because that's a constantly like moving target, like is this authentic mapo tofu, which means like how do you make your mapo tofu if it has gochujang in it? That means that you're not really Asian American. You're like, so like the bar for being Chinese
is constantly moving, which means that if you make your mapo this way, if you wear shoes in the house, if you like all of these things, and at a certain point, it's like if you're half white, then you're not Chinese, or like if you don't look Chinese, then you're not Chinese. Like it's just this constant moving bar, which is dumb, and I hate it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
100%.
So that's part of like the big, like one thing that like always stands out to me, and like how like I always think about food when I think about culture, is that like it represents that that struggle of like finding your identity as an Asian person, like an Asian American, not just Asian but Asian American, and like figuring out like what the hell does that mean to be Asian American,
Well, I'll drink to that. Cheers. And let's take a break. So I want to talk a little bit about Oakland, because we are here in Oakland, and all of us live in Oakland actually, and Xochi the Dog Cafe, where we are doing our show, is located in East Oakland. But I guess the question is why Oakland? For both of you, you both operate in Oakland, and operate in Oakland. Why Oakland? Why not San Francisco? Why not Berkeley? Why not somewhere else? What made you? Yeah, why Oakland? Either of you.
Well, so I ended up here kind of by accident. I was going to Cal, and then I moved to Oakland while I was still at Cal for 3 years, and then I just never left. For a little while, I was considering moving to San Francisco, but like kind of just got priced out of it, and then it just never happened. And then I kind of just discovered that like Oakland is a lot more representative of the things that I value as not even at that time, not even a musician, or even like just like as a creative person. The things that I value and the things that I want to see in my community are actually in Oakland. And that like what I have like more recently over the last like 5 years or so, I've started to discover like the things, the beautiful creative communities that you think exist everywhere in the Bay Area. They're here in Oakland. Which is funny because everybody's afraid of Oakland, this shit, right? But like really, like all of those beautiful things that are happening, all of these like really amazing creative communities, they're right here, and that's like why I've been like so resiliently like, no, I'm never leaving the city, because I love the community here.
That's great. Christian, what about you?
Similarly,
Yeah.
I do feel not necessarily on purpose and kind of on accident. I ended up in, honestly, California kind of just swallowed me whole. I never intended on living here or staying here this long, but like, shouts to Oakland. And similarly, it's like, I always found myself, because I did live in Berkeley for a moment, but I found myself spending so much time in Oakland, and I was like living in Berkeley and like working in San Francisco, or living in Berkeley, working in Berkeley, but like, I was always finding myself in Oakland, and like, that's where like all my friends were, all like the nightlife stuff that I was doing, like everything was just always in Oakland. And it was like I left my job in Berkeley at Chez Panisse, and I was just like, well, I'm very much like time management is not my strong suit. So like when I tell you I lived across the street from Chez Panisse when I worked there and was still like 10 minutes late every day, like I could see my house from my station in the cafe. and I would still be like running into the locker room, putting on my coat, like buttoning it up, hoping that the chef didn't notice, like I'm not in the meeting yet, like. So like during the pandemic, once I left there, I was like, oh, like I also don't want to live with 10 people anymore, let me go live in Oakland. And yeah, it just like made the most sense. And now operating, because I also like started my pop-ups during the pandemic, it was kind of just like I have so many connections here, and I have so much community here, and it's like if we're like, hey, can we like renegade, like sell some shit at your restaurant, like it's like I'm going to my friends in Oakland, because then they're just like, yeah, for sure, like whatever you want, like shouts to Janice at Pop Kitchen, like shouts to Sarah at Miss Ollie's, like shouts to friends and family, like all these people are just like, yeah, like absolutely, like let's do it, like sounds fun, like let's.
They're just down.
Yeah, and but I feel like if I even had like similar friends or connections in like San Francisco, it'd be like, oh yeah, for sure, like we should cover our overhead with you, and like all of them are very much just like, here are the keys, and
yeah,
Yes.
You know, like it's like, and it's just, it's so much more communal and like the actual communal, the actual community, the actual all these things, like kind of just like Oakland.
Right. That was definitely like a big experience that I had when I like first started the Wu Can Cook pop-up. Was like there were a lot of like a handful of like very significant people in Oakland, so like specifically the Alameda Antiques Fair, Federation Brewing, and the Good Hop, who were just like, you have no content, you have no photos, you don't even have a website really, but sure. Like, yeah, why not? Like, sure, just do it. Like,
Yeah.
Get in here. We need you.
no, so that, yeah, there was definitely like more of a like just people, like specifically just like people that are like, yeah, I'll take a risk, man.
We're down.
Yeah, I like what you're doing. Let's, which I also is like going back to like the pop-ups. Like that's why I'm like so committed to like I want to take the money that we're making and put it back into that community. Like I don't want to take the money and then put it back into San Francisco. Because like that's like literally what gentrification is, right? So like,
And how do you do that? How do you put
so
the money back?
yeah, so like a big part of like what like my big mission has just been like spending as much money as I can. Because like anytime that you run a business, you're gonna spend money, right? So like every time that, right? So like every time that I like think about like, okay, these are things that I need. The first thought that goes through my mind is like, can I buy that locally? Is it something that I can buy? And specifically, is it something that I can buy in Oakland, Chinatown? Because that's like that's my home, right? That's where I live. This is like the space. That's where all of these spaces are that like lifted me up, right? So I like want to give it back. So like as we like. When we grocery shop, the wholesale grocers that we go to are in Oakland, Chinatown. The stuff that's specifically Chinese is always stuff that you buy in China. Is like the Chinatown grocery store. So I'm not going to like New Meiwa in San Francisco Chinatown. Where like I'm going to like Hometown Grocer, which is this little hole in the wall, like right around the corner. But like I've been shopping there for like 7 years now. Like I go there like when I make dinner. That's the place I go to. So now I just go there and like look. Give me all of the green onions you have. 30 of them, just give me all of them. Like, I don't care if it costs more, just give me all of it. Nice. And like, so I'll just like, I'll go around to all of these grocery stores and like figure out a way to spend money here as much as I can. Eventually there's like a point where it's like this cooler is literally only sold on Amazon, so I'm buying it on Amazon,
Sure.
But as much as I possibly can is like, let's just spend it back here,
That's great.
What you're talking about with buying locally, like specifically from Chinatown, and then before when you were talking about like the aspect of Asian, or in this case Chinese identity, of trying to like reach a goalpost, I was like, it's really different with like black households.
Yeah,
it
is, right? Yeah.
And even with that, I was like. And we've like talked about it, not just necessarily like food deserts, which there are a lot of in Oakland. But also it's like even when there is episode 3 grocers, like there's not like black grocers like anywhere. Like they're like you have to go to like the most time that I have like black food businesses that are like trying to like do stuff, and there are a lot of black food businesses in Oakland. And pop-ups and stuff at farmers markets and stuff like that. But if we're talking about like people who are like growing the food specifically, or people who are like selling the ingredients, do you know what I mean? Then it's like the like margin is narrower and narrower and narrower. Like especially from my perspective, like Christian, like correct me if I'm wrong, like it's like incredibly hard to like keep the black dollar inside of the black
community.
So it's like right.
Well,
So
Christian, where do you? Sorry.
no go.
Oh, Christian, where do you source your food from? And have you found difficulties in that?
Yes and no. I think that a lot of the sourcing that I do is like very much like I have these principles and these things I want to apply to, and sometimes like it is hard to keep the black dollar in the black community, because it's like being that I worked at Shape Things for so long, it's like I'm so familiar with so many amazing, incredible farmers, and it's like like in like Monterey Market, a grocery store in Berkeley, it's like I love that store down, but it's like it's not necessarily black owned, but it's like I will support it because they support so many community farms, and like for me it's like like I want to support community farms, and it's like, but at the same time I'm working on a partnership with Ashley, who owns Brown Girl Farms in Hayward, and it's like she's she's like starting a plot. Like she has a plot that she's dedicating to me for my pop-ups.
Oh, cool.
And like so it's like those are like initiatives that I'm doing, but at the same time it's like if I wanted to like kind of try, it's like I would have to go to like Mandela Market, and it's like they have like it's like, oh, okay, I'll just buy all of your potatoes. Yeah, or like I'll like there's it's not necessarily like you know what I mean. Like it's like
It's
I'll
really
buy
hard,
all
yeah.
of your because it's also it's because and even like Complex Oakland like they converted their bottom floor into a grocery store, but it's also like they're addressing the food deserts they're in, and like it's also like they're addressing the needs of the people in these food deserts, and it's like it's a lot of canned goods, it's a lot of like shelf stable things, it's a lot of things that like I can't necessarily incorporate into what I'm doing. So it's like, yeah, I want to
Yeah,
support,
it's a
but like I don't.
You can't
need-
use those things.
Yeah, like I don't need hummus. You know, like I don't need like pre-made salad dressing. I don't need all these shelf stable things that like, yes, like a mother of 4 who's cooking for her kids when she gets home from work. Like this is helping her.
Yeah.
But like it's not necessarily helping me.
Right.
And it's like even like black artisans and creators and growers and all those things. It's like I haven't found him yet. Like it's like, and Sarah from Miss Ollie's is very good at that. Like, oh, like I got a guy who has a herd of goat and like a herd of goats in like some random town that I've never heard of that I don't want to get caught in at night. You know, and I'm just like, okay, well, can I have 2? Like, what? She's like, oh yeah, like I got a guy who grows like halal chicken up in Richmond, and I'm like, can I have a cake? Like, what's a cake? Like, can I have some? Like,
Can I have a chicken?
And she's very like, oh yeah, like you gotta tell him like 2 weeks in advance because like he'll kill him for you. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm like, I need them tomorrow. Like they have, like they're walking around, their heart's still beating. Like, I need them tomorrow.
Like I had such a good follow-up question, and I just completely lost it.
Nice.
No, because that's the thing. Like Sankofa Farms. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like,
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, well, there are these like little farms, kind of like growing up and popping up in all these places. It's like yes. But then we kind of go into this thing that I feel like we're all kind of talking about, and we will talk about at the end a little bit is like land. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like not just owning a business on a land, you know, but it's like being able to like literally what we were talking about with all of the dishes of just like this cycle of growing up with processed, you know, stuff. Do you know what I mean? And then like learning about food and our culture and stuff like that, and then being able to like connect more with the land through the food. And it's like you're like we're talking about like this one grocer, and it's like, yo, who's gonna be like that next like Christian Washington who's eating like, you know, the stuff from like Complex Kitchen that they can get, and then like eventually, you know, they'll develop into like and can make all of this food and more. Like, what are they gonna create? So, like, I think that that's the other thing of found my follow-up question. Like, I think that that's the thing of like, because the places that both of you also exist in, the communities and all of that, it's like it's vastly different. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't want to say like, what's your mission? Do you know what I mean? But it's like there is something that like. It seems to me that we're all, and you two in particular, because you're at this table, like, are trying to communicate or share or like grow with the food that you make. So I think that that's like my like question, is like, you know, when it comes to like the communities that you serve, the food that you're trying to share, like, what are you trying to like give or communicate or like establish like with these meals or these spaces? So yeah. Christian.
I think that, and like with our papa being called, or I feel like papa isn't a good word to call it.
It isn't, right?
Yeah, like it's like
What do
it's
you
very
call
much
it?
like
a temporary food booth.
or like I feel like because like for us it's more of like a brand almost. 'Cause it's like we like when I tell you we like just like do random things. Like we've gone from like literally like I've done like pop-up events at Chez Panisse where like I'm doing a full menu, and I've also like done an event where we called it fish fry beauty supply, where like my homegirl who owns a hair salon, like there was a girl installing lashes, a girl installing lace fronts, someone selling their makeup, someone doing someone's makeup, and like I'm outside frying fish and hush puppy.
Right.
You know, like it's like, and it was just like very much like we're just like
Yeah.
all selling whatever we sell in like the same place,
Right.
and like also there's 2 DJs and we're like gonna get drunk and dance.
Yep.
Like you know, like so
Right.
it's like there's
Doing
it's just
things.
yeah, like it's so there's
Yeah.
so it also sometimes we're like, okay, is this what we want to be doing? Like there are points when we're like, does this align with like our original mission? But like that original point of like we're called the Comfort Collective, and like when I was like coming up with the name, I very much like was like playing with like the phrase like Southern comfort and like all these things, and like the word that like I very much have a chaotic like note in my phone. Like I was on an airplane, like what am I gonna say? And like the word that kept finding itself in the phrase and in the tagline was the word comfort. And I think we, as the Comfort Collection, myself and my co-founder Sade, who is probably asleep hopefully because she needs rest.
It's okay. She'll come episode 4.
Great. We just want to like encompass that word and like every aspect of the meaning of like we want to create like comfortable workspaces for like Black and brown and queer and trans people in our industry and like femmes in our industry and all these things. And like we also obviously like, and like honestly I'm gonna say this, like for me customers are like the bottom of the ladder. Like you're the bottom rung. Like because like it's like y'all are like, if everything else is right, y'all will be fine. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
I am very much the like trashy millennial whatever like decentering customers and customer service like ideas. Because for me it's like if I'm sourcing and ethically sourcing food and like all these things and like bringing like the best food I could find and like the peak of its season and it like sat on a truck for maybe 30 minutes to get to me, and I'm also like finding people and like getting hands to help me, and I'm like giving them a wage that helps them live their life comfortably. And then you know it's like, and all like if I'm engaging in everything that I'm doing as like the leader of this
Right.
thing,
Yeah.
like
Right.
everyone's going to experience like that comfort that I want the world to experience, and therefore when I'm having this food that was like grown with this like love and comfort and like is cherished, that comes in, and like these hands that are loved and comforted and cherished
Yes.
are creating with
Like every single.
like, you know, like then when you get a spoonful of it, it's just a spoonful of
Yeah. all
comfort,
of the
love, and cherishing and all these things. And like when you're not drudging to work, you're not like getting in your car seeing there's no gas and rolling your eyes because you got to go to this job that doesn't pay, you know, like it's like it just makes everyone have a good time from the top to bottom on both sides. And I think that's kind of like the core of comfort and like what we want to be doing. And it's like I feel like no one considers that, you know what I mean? Like I've worked in a myriad of restaurants where it's like I'm making food that's being sold for like I will have made enough food that this restaurant has sold and probably made $10,000, but I'm being fed a square of Stouffer's lasagna.
Right.
At the end of the night, you know what I mean? Like it's like at 1 a.m. after degreasing the
Yes.
like,
Right.
Right.
The
After
pan.
degreasing the grill.
like not even like the hot flat top
yeah,
with like
right.
the like noxious steam from the degreaser hitting me in the face, like,
Yep.
and now a like almost finished defrosting Stouffer's lasagna
Yep.
is what I can nourish myself with, you know what I mean? And it's like
Right.
cool. And now I have to get in my car with no gas and drive to my tiny apartment. You know, like it's like no, you know, what I mean? Like we should and like I think that the idea of like considering ourselves first in everything we do, and when I say ourselves, I mean like the people who are working, like because like at the end of the day, like you can get a plate of food on the table and you're gonna like pay for it, like you know what I mean, and you're like, and not to say that I don't care about customers because like obviously like y'all are gonna keep the lights on in the building, but like I want to make sure the person who's turning the lights on also is as cherished as you want to feel, because they're the ones that's gonna do it, not me, because I'm in the back running around.
Right.
You know, like I'm not the one. Like it's like the person who's cooking your food, like they might drop your salmon on the floor and be like, whatever. You know, like you know, like all those things go away when
You take care of your people.
you take care of your people, and your people take care of people when they're taken care of,
Right.
and like that utility belt is full.
I love that.
And yeah, that's my ramble.
I mean, that means that like it sounds like you're absolutely giving back to your community. Then maybe not by like buying groceries specifically, but like
Yeah.
more tangibly though.
And that kind of, I mean, that sort of answers my last question, which was going to be, is food, can food be revolutionary? Can what you're doing with food be revolutionary? Can it be empowering? Can food be empowering? And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. Is you're not just thinking about the product. You're thinking about the entire life cycle.
Well,
The
I
entire
think
cycle.
that's the other thing that like both of you are actually talking about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Wesley, when you were talking about like even the act of like making sure it's like, you know, keep, like we were saying, keeping the dollar, like in Chinatown, or and then it's not like it's not a binary at this table. Do you know what I mean? But it's just like looking at the entire cycle inside of like a purchasing cycle, or looking at an entire cycle within like a restaurant cycle. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like both of these things are looking at. Y'all are fascinating. Like both of these things are looking at the entire, like the, looking at food holistically. Like, and you know, obviously, this table, this thing that we're showcasing is like the end result of like
That-
all of the
yeah,
other things that we're
all
talking
of those things.
about.
Yeah.
Like, and not just what, like both of you are thinking about consciously with the cycle, but all of the history that's gotten like all of us to like at this point. It's like that also that's coming into the cycle too.
Right.
Because it is a cycle. It's a whole ecosystem, right?
Right.
We love to focus on the product, and we sometimes focus on the chef, but there's a whole world,
thing. Right.
a whole industry, a whole ecosystem of people and places and things that are
Yeah,
all
where those things come
involved.
from.
And if there isn't equity and comfort in that ecosystem, then it's going to affect everybody involved.
I feel like that's not even specifically food. That's just like ethically running a business. It's
Yeah.
just like reinvesting in your community. That is not even. That's just all businesses. That's how all businesses should be run. You know?
Right.
And not many are.
Pay your workers, right?
Right.
You know, take care of your people.
Right.
And it's crazy. It's crazy because like thank you, and thank you, but B, it's like I want to like thank both of you for joining us, because at the same time it's like I could sit here talking with all of you about these topics for the next like 12 hours. But also like I want to like be able to like respect like our time and respect like also because we're gonna eat the rest of this food.
Yes.
Like like we need to turn off the camera so that we need to so that we can
Stuff our faces.
Yeah.
Essentially we got ice cream later. Thank you, Christian. So it's like but you know, like before we go, like a lot of gratitude because once again, this is such a beautiful meal.
Yeah.
I'm excited about like Xochi, and I'm excited about like the stuff that you two are creating because it's like it's very much people trying to just create more harmonious, beautiful spaces. And I like have to thank, you know, Xochi the Dog Cafe and Antoine for like allowing us into that space because I know that that's what they're doing here. And then like the ultimate gratitude, speaking about food, is like we can't do any of this without, you know, thanking the Ohlone people because we are in Oakland, but we are on unceded Ohlone Chichenyo land specifically. And that's kind of like the ultimate like thank you of like all of this food is like all of this connection, all of these things are kind of like not possible without thanking like the land and the stewards of the land. So like that's like the thing that like all of this like love, all of this comfort, you know, that was provided, you know, this was the land that I at least in this moment that I could experience it. So
Cool.
yeah, I want to say like thank you and thank you and thank you.
Yes.
But
Thank you
also
so
like
much.
before we go because it's recorded audio something. Tell the children where they can find you, how
Yes.
how they can support you.
Yes,
So,
please
yeah.
share your
Share all the handles.
handles.
Woo Can Cook everything. So YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and then we're at the Good Hop every Friday, and the Alameda Antiques Fair every first Sunday, and other things.
And that's WOO.
Yeah,
Woo Can Cook.
like Yang Can Cook, but Woo Can Cook.
Got it.
Yes.
Classic. Well, it's like,
Classic.
God, TikTok. There are a lot of things I will do for $1. I wish my, socials weren't as chaotic, but so my personal Instagram, my personal Instagram is bigwash with 2 H's, BIGWASHH. Our Comfort Collective Instagram is eat.drink.comfort because, I don't know what the person who has comfort as their ad on Instagram does, but and we do have a website. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like it's like an account with like 4 followers and like they follow you. It's weird. But yeah, eat.drink.comfort is our Instagram. We have a website that I think is eatdrinkcomfort.com, no periods. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Like we're very, very, we're not new. We've been doing this for like 8 months, but like, I don't know.
We're all developing.
Yeah, it's very much like
we don't want to be on the internet.
And
Nice.
and then you'll find us next time at theforumcollective.com. And this was the pilot episode of
Eat your heart out.
Eat your heart out. Eat your heart out.
Eat your
Eat
heart
your heart out. Oh,
Eat
it's
less
gonna
than
it's gonna
3
be a
out.
joke forever now. I can't. Oh man. Ryan, thank you so much.
The title might be different in a few episodes. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. And with that, out. Bye everybody.